So after watching these last 3 videos, you'll know the genetic and hormonal factors that can produce what are known as the intersex conditions. And you'll also understand a little bit about hormonal influences and genetic influences on sexual orientation. Now, there will be a separate video for congenital adrenal hyperplasia and a separate video for sexual orientation. So most people have a gender identity that matches their external appearance. And gender identity refers to how we identify sexually and what we call ourselves. Do we identify as being male or do we identify as being female? However, some people have a gender identity that's opposite their biological sex, or somewhere in between. And psychologists and researchers once believed that gender identity was learned and more of a product of rearing or experience, but current evidence really strongly suggests that biological factors, especially prenatal hormones, play a large role in this gender identity. And we've kind of talked about some of those things in that, especially in that first video, and maybe the second video as well. So just to clear a few other things. So when you hear someone talk about sex differences are biological. They refer to the chromosomal differences. They refer to the anatomical differences. When you hear someone refer to gender differences, this is what results from people's thoughts about themselves as male or female. How do they feel? Do they feel male or do they feel female? So just keep that in mind as you go on and you read research about different areas in psychobiology or psychology. Is it sex differences refer to biological differences, and gender differences refer to how people feel or identify. Now, intersex conditions are conditions where people have anatomies that are in between male and female. And this could be varying degrees. It could be a mixture of male and female anatomy. It could be poorly developed anatomy. It could be ambiguous anatomy. And previously, people that had this condition were called hermaphrodites, but we now call it a condition rather than labeling them with a particular name. So what we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about is some of the causes of these intersex conditions. So the first cause we're going to talk about are people that are born with an XX chromosomal pattern, but an SRY gene has moved from the father's Y chromosome onto another chromosome. So that's what you see here. So here's your typical SRY gene on the Y chromosome and your typical X chromosome, and somehow there's been an abnormal recombination, and now that SRY gene has translocated to this X chromosome. So you have an X sperm and you have an X egg, and you have an XX chromosomal pattern, but they're male because they have that SRY gene. Now let's think, what would happen to someone with that SRY gene, with an XX chromosomal pattern? So they have this gene. Do you remember from the first video what that gene does to those undifferentiated internal reproductive organs? What does it do to the gonads? It causes the gonads to turn into testes. And then what are those testes going to produce? Testosterone. So as they produce testosterone, that testosterone is then going to do what to those internal reproductive organs? It's going to masculinize them because, as we said, masculinization depends on testosterone, both the anatomy and in the brain, the presence or absence of that testosterone. All right, so we've covered that one, and then you're going to come back and watch a second video that talks about this atypical hormone pattern, and we'll come back in a minute and talk about androgen insensitivity. The next cause of intersex conditions we're going to talk about in this video is androgen insensitivity. And so this is where you have someone with an XY chromosomal pattern. So XY would make them biologically male, but they have the genital appearance of a female. So how would this happen? They have an XY chromosomal pattern, so they have an SRY gene. If they have an SRY gene, those undifferentiated gonads have turned into testes, and those testes are now producing what? Androgens. So their production of androgens is normal. So why then do they have a genital appearance of a female? So let's think of some potential reasons. Perhaps they have normal levels of androgens, but what did we say what do those androgens have to bind to in order to masculinize the brain and the body? Receptors. So perhaps they lack the androgen receptor, So if they lack the androgen receptor, the testosterone or the androgens can't activate the genes in the cell's nucleus, and masculinization will not happen. Now, this can occur in various degrees, from smaller than average penis to genitals that have more of a female type of appearance. Make sure you watch the last 2 videos, fill out that intersex condition handout, and submit it onto Canvas.